Mrs. Dalloway takes place in a day. Ulysses takes place in a day as well, and employs every possible literary trick you could think of. I just sometimes I sometimes feel I need to do more with my writing. I feel I was sometimes when I was younger I was a bit more adventurous. Now it keeps the roof on, so I'm taking risks that I feel are safe risks rather than risks I think are risky risks. I forgot the question. I forgot what the question was. It was a long time ago.
I guess how do you go about sort of stopping yourself from having to write characters in sort of very odd ways in order to justify the time spans? Jump cuts, edits, techniques like that.
Right from the point of view of the ferret, they have a very different idea about time. They just have a now. I do recommend writing from the point of view of a ferret. It's such fun. And you can get away with saying really rude things on Twitter and say, it wasn't me, it was my character.
See, I sometimes wonder if, particularly in Western literature, we are handed a list of things that literature should do. Irony is greatly valued. Why? No one has ever made a case for why irony is valuable. It's not. It's there as a given that somehow irony is valuable.
I have an acquaintance from university who once said that he could only really respect and enjoy a novel if he was absolutely convinced the author was cleverer than he was. At which point I thought, that's why irony is in novels, isn't it? It's to allow authors to show off in order to impress 23-year-old young men.
But it is a purely literary conceit. Irony doesn't exist in reality. Likewise, we were talking lunch yesterday about romance writers. It's the toughest form of writing there is.
Brilliant. They take the most appalling flack from every side.
But I don't believe that romance exists the way it's written in books. I think it's a literary construct. You know, it's like rom-coms. It's lovely, meet cute yet again. Boy meets girl, girl loses boy. They get back together, or maybe not with somebody else. But I believe that kind of romance, in the sense that it's meant, is a literary construct as much as irony is, and doesn't really exist.
It's a marketing category.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is.
Back to Indian cinema, you have the romance which is after they've married and they learn to find out what it's like to they strain it. Different, and of course the original romance movement wasn't really anything to do with that at all. I mean, The Three Musketeers is a deeply romantic novel and a classic of the romance genre. So is Les Miserables. One is a swashbuckler which is full of male bonding, and the other is a novel about revolution and death and poverty. And they are both romantic. And then you've got Lord Byron, who I personally think the whole of romance was spoiled by Byron, because Byron obsessed Emily Bronte. Emily Bronte wrote Wuthering Heights, which is the most uncontrolled, erotic, hysterical novel in 19th century literature. And everybody else thinks you need a Heathcliff. And this is setting a pattern that you're not a woman unless you've got an abusive man in your life. Oh, please. And I had to study that for GCSEs.
We got Far from the Madding Crowd.
Oh, that's almost as bad.
That's awful. And a friend of mine wrote, this is basically a glorified woman's own serial, and he got failed on. But the thing is, he's right. It was actually written as if. Absolutely right.
There's a very brilliant book the Crow wrote. I think it's an absolutely brilliant book. It's very funny. It's very clever. It's a family saga. The press went, oh my God, this is amazing. Nobody's done this since John Galworthy.
Already, yes.
And I'm sitting there going, Joanna Trollope, Maeve Binchy. Women have been writing books like that continuously. And it's a question of what label was on it, because Maeve Binchy was labelled romance, and Ian Banks was labelled literary fiction.
She's a much tougher writer than that, Maeve Binchy. She is actually
incredibly grim, and very, very honest, and not at all what you think of as romance, abortion and death.
I believe that all great stories are ultimately love stories, but not all love stories are romances.
which is one of the strengths of if you look at the Three Musketeers as a cycle, beginning from, you know, the point where D'Artagnan rides into the town in the morning, and ending when he dies at the siege of Maastricht at the end of the Man in Iron Mask. It is an intensely romantic story, but it's about fraternal love.
Yeah.
We when we were